And then I realized, maybe my health is being impacted by the amount of stuff that I have, the obligations I'm constantly saying yes to, and the thoughts going on in my head.
Welcome back to the Sunshine Cafe. I'm Lisa Roers, your host, and hey, thanks for joining me today. I'm here just to pour some positive back into your day with practical tips and stories to encourage and inspire. So let's dive in. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Sunshine Cafe. I'm Lisa Roers, your host, and I have a great friend joining us today. Her name is Emily McDermott. She is a wife, a mom of two very energetic boys, and I like to call her the simplicity seeker. She has a heart to help moms find peace on the other side of that cluttered chaos. She's also the host of the globally ranked Moms Overcoming Overwhelm podcast, and she's also serving as a decluttering coach. She helps moms clear the clutter in their homes, their hearts, and their heads. And I just love her practical, grace-filled approach. She also offers us a surprising twist in how decluttering our homes and our calendars can help our health. So I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation, so let's dive in. Hello and welcome back to the Sunshine Cafe. I am Lisa Roers, your host, and I have a sweet, sweet friend with me today that is going to encourage you in a multitude of ways. And her story, well, I'm going to let her tell you her story, but she has some beautiful encouragements for you. So before I say any more, Emily McDermott, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Lisa. I'm really excited to be here.
You and I got connected through another friend we know who also helps with decluttering our life and decluttering our calendars, and what a constant exercise that has to be. A lot of work that just you always have to do maintenance on that. So tell us a little bit about how because you do some of that as well. You also have a beautiful podcast for moms. So let's talk a little bit about your background and how you got into some of that work.
Yeah, sure. So I always like to say that I didn't go to college and get a degree in stuff management. This is definitely something that I wasn't ever expecting to do, but feel very blessed that this is now kind of how I get to spend my time. So my story and kind of embracing minimalism and simplicity and decluttering happened when my husband and I were struggling with unexplained infertility. So that pretty much means physically there's nothing wrong, you just have trouble conceiving. And I always felt like God had placed on my heart to become a mom. I had always wanted to become a mom. And I definitely, like I said, sort of that type A overachiever. And so growing up, it was always, okay, well, I'm going to study and I'll get the A, or I'm going to work hard and I'm going to have this outcome. And this was the first time in my life where I was trying for this outcome in every way I knew possible, and it wasn't happening. And I definitely would say that my faith was tested the most during this season. I just was wondering, okay, well, maybe this isn't a dream that God has in my heart, or maybe I just think that it is. And as we were looking at options for fertility treatments, I came across this habits program called Zen Habits. It's with Leo Babauta, and it was like this different focus of habits every month. And through that, I was able to discover the minimalists and also Joshua Becker and some of these kind of bigger names with minimalism. And then I realized, maybe my health is being impacted by the amount of stuff that I have, the obligations that I'm constantly saying yes to, and also the thoughts going on in my head as far as whether this is going to happen, whether I'm going to become a mom or not, and what that means for me and my identity. And so I was able to kind of dive into that and started getting rid of more of the physical stuff, which is normally where people start. And then found out after we had our first via IVF that we were pregnant again unexpectedly. And then I ended up having two under two. And that was a whole other season of really doubling down on simplifying, because I was going through postpartum anxiety and I just needed everything to be super, super simple because I was struggling so much. And so that was really when I started simplifying not only our space, but then also our routines and the calendar and all of those things. And I have been supporting others on that journey ever since. So I've had my podcast for 2.5 years now, and then I do in person and virtual decluttering, specifically focusing on the overwhelmed mom. So that's kind of how I got here.
Wow. Wow. That is a journey for sure. The childbearing thing is one of those things I think we all, especially us women who are the type A, like the perfectionist, like I can control, I can do it all and I am going to do it all. And then we get to that fertility thing and we're like, darn it, I have zero control over this. I have zero. And I think it's a humbling experience to realize that there are just some things in life, and actually a lot more than we ever realize once you get to that point and you actually have that revelation, that there's very few things in life that we have 100% control over. There's only so much we can do. So I love that you were able to move through that and have some revelations in the process that simplicity actually might be the secret to sanity, might be the secret to your
Yeah.
fertility. So tell me about some of the things you did to start peeling back the layers of those. I mean, you mentioned that you started with things, but how did that affect your health?
Yeah, I think that what we don't recognize normally is that stuff is not neutral. It actually impacts our physical and emotional health. And it wasn't until I started getting into this work that I started looking at some of the science behind it. And so clutter actually raises our cortisol, stress hormone levels. It can impact our sleep if we're in a cluttered bedroom. It can impact our food choices. So if we're in a cluttered kitchen, we're more likely to pick junk food. And so I didn't know all of this at the time, but I've always been very sensitive to my environment. And doing a little bit more digging, I learned about this concept of a highly sensitive person, HSP. And so I'm sensitive to noise, I'm sensitive to touch, and then, of course, I have 2 boys and close in age, and so that was really challenging for me, continues to be challenging for me. And then just being able to recognize, okay, the simpler that my environment is, the more conducive it is to, of course, my physical health, but also more of that emotional health, my stress levels. And so just doing everything that I could to, again, simplify my decision. So one of the things I always talk about with the moms I work with is looking at the unnecessary decisions that we have and trying to remove those or to simplify those. So getting dressed in the morning, if I can have less choice, then I'm less overwhelmed by the choices. It's easier for me to get dressed. If I can in a season, do one kind of exercise. If I can in a season, eat one breakfast for a while, then it's that less decisions and less decision fatigue, which I don't know a person alive or definitely not a mom alive that doesn't feel that decision fatigue at the end of the day. And so recognizing that connection between stuff and decisions and decision fatigue, overwhelm, stress, all of that was so enlightening to me because, like you said, simplicity really was my sanity. And with the different hormonal health issues that I've had, especially over the last like 5 to 10 years, um, it's helped me navigate that a lot better because when there's less in my environment and less that I'm trying to manage and I'm staying within my capacity rather than exceeding it, then it just helps my health in every possible way. So I'm not going back. I'm just going to keep trying to simplify things further. This has been my life for the last decade, and I continue to see areas where I can simplify and make things easier.
That is amazing. That is amazing. It's so counterintuitive to our culture,
Mhm.
isn't it? Whether it's with our health or whether it's with our life and our lifestyle, we always have a tendency to add more, add more, add more. I'm not feeling very well. We'll add this. I'm having a cold. We'll add this pharmaceutical. Or I'm not sleeping very well. Well, let's add this. And so many times, the right answer is what to remove instead of what to add. And I'm so grateful that you were given that insight into the sensitivities that you had, and you were able to strip away some of those things. So the things in life didn't have you, and you had more control over them. And you can only do that when you limit them and get down to something more simple. One of the other things you said, or two other things you said about decision fatigue, I remember that so clearly when I would come home from corporate office when I was working out there. And I was like, honey, I don't know. I'm done with decisions today. You decide what we're having for dinner. I can't even decide what I want for dinner. I'm just done. So that's a really key thing for sure. And the second piece of that is just like the limiting how many decisions we need to make. And I like how you said there's certain seasons where you don't have to, have oatmeal for the rest of your life, but have, this week is going to be simple and we're going to do these things in the morning, going to aim for these things in the afternoon, or even the schedule of these are the days we're going to go out to eat. These are the days we're staying home, and just having that kind of gentle framework that you can kind of live within with permission to change as things
Yeah.
come into it. But what other suggestions do you have for your clients that you work with and the women that you team up with to try to help them work through that?
Yeah. So always remembering our capacity. Like I always say that I could live in a home that's 5,000 square feet, and then you have a mom that's living in a one-bedroom apartment in New York City. And our space is very different, but our capacity as women, or as moms may not be very different. So it doesn't mean that in such a large home, we need to fill every available space that we have. We more want to select intentionally what we're surrounding ourselves with based upon our capacity to manage things in this season. So it's always based upon seasonality of your life. And that could be, oh, okay, well, like we're starting, a sports season right now. So things are going to look different. It could be a baby, it could be a job, it could be a variety of things. But that's not really what our culture tells us. Our culture tells us to keep taking on more and we can handle this and we're capable. So we can take on more and say yes and say yes. And just being very unapologetic about making decisions based upon our capacity and also using artificial boundaries. So, artificial boundaries is something that works with our physical stuff, but also with our calendar, meaning that, so my laptop is being propped up here on something that I use for my kids called a treasure box with treasure in quotes. And it's all the junky stuff that they get from birthday parties or Valentine's Day or the dentist or any of this.
Trinkets, I
Yeah,
call those.
trinkets. Yes. If I kept every single trinket they have ever received since their birth, I would need like multiple huge bins for it, right? So we make decisions based upon this one shoebox that they've had for years. And so we just, when more comes in than can fit, we make decisions based upon that boundary. And that's what we do for everything. That's what we do for books. It's what we do for clothes. It's what we do for really any category. Just setting that artificial boundary and then making decisions based upon the boundary rather than, oh, my home can fit this, or oh, we can fit, 10 more stuffed animals on my bed. And like, that's not, that's not the point. But also in our schedules. So being able to have that margin, not cramming our schedules just because we can, but being able to understand, okay, I need to have this buffer in my day and not apologizing for it, not apologizing that we're not busy all the time or that when people ask, how are you? We always say busy. Like we don't have to have that be our default just because that's the most culturally acceptable answer. So how can we intentionally have margin in our day? Because that is what allows us to live within our capacity rather than being constantly burnout and stressed and everything. So I'm a big proponent of having that artificial boundary or margin or whatever you want to call it so that we can better live within our capacity.
That's fantastic. Yeah, artificial or a self-imposed boundary might be another way because it's a very
Mhm.
real boundary. But I think that's a really great way. It's kind of like if you want to buy a new shirt, something into the closet, something has to come out of the closet.
Yeah.
And that's a great way to help keep up with it. So you're not finding yourself every 2 to 3 years having to have a major overhaul to a particular space. You're just kind of ongoing maintenance with it. And oh, you had said something else that was you had so many things that were so good. Um, The margin, I think the margin is so important. I think it's the piece that we all forget, that having the flexibility in our calendars, in our homes, and in our mental space for something unexpected
Yeah.
is critical. And if we don't have any margin, you can't put one more thing in. Or if you do, you end up overflowing, and that ends up coming out like stress and frustration. And you end up getting mad at your family members, your kids, your spouse, and that's ugly. So if we can build in some more margin and accept that that's the beautiful life we are cultivating, curating intentionally, then we've got the space for other things that, maybe a neighbor needs some help.
Yeah.
Maybe a mom wasn't expecting to give birth, but ended up going into labor early and now needs help with her family. And you can provide that, or vice versa, because you have margin.
Yeah, and I've noticed that within families, there's different thresholds for margin. Like I know I always want to leave like super early to go to things, and my husband is not the same way. And so I find that I get kind of, when I feel like we need to be out the door. So I just do proactively like, okay, I'm going to have myself ready. I'm going to have the things for the kids ready because things always happen unexpectedly, especially with kids. They always seem to need things the second we're supposed to be going out to the door to get
Yes,
the bus or
right.
whatever. But just recognizing that about myself, that I just want more margin so that I'm showing up as the wife and mom that I want to be. And then, like you said, when these unexpected things happen, I can be the friend I want to be. I can be the neighbor I want to be because I'm not having everything just crammed in. And I think that for a long time, again, going back to the achievement and so forth, it was more like, "Oh, you need that? Like, oh, I can take that on," or, "Oh, if I don't do it, no one else is going to do it." And I don't know if it's entering my 40s or what it is, but I just don't feel like that obligation anymore. I feel like protecting my time, protecting the margin in my day is just more important than making other people happy. So that's kinda
Yeah.
how I have been approaching it.
Yeah. Well, I think there's seasons in our life, right? And when you are just starting your life, your career, your adult life, I'll say the adult part of your life, and you're just getting out of college, there is a season where you want to take everything you possibly can, because every opportunity is a new experience, and every opportunity might lead to something really amazing. And so we end up establishing that mental state of, let's take it all on so we can try new things. But then, like you said, as you get to a certain part of your life, you're like, I've tried those things. I know which ones I like, which ones I don't. I'm going to
Yeah.
stop taking on all the things and really cultivate a life that I love with the
Mhm.
things that I know I like.
Yeah, and I definitely again, the unapologetic aspect of it, I feel like for a long time, I felt like I had to explain my no, right? Say, someone says, "Oh, okay, can you do this?" And I say, "No, because I have such and such and such." And I know it's cliche, but the no is a complete sentence. Like, that's something that I've been trying to embrace lately. Like, I don't need to justify why I'm saying no to this. It's just no. And if I feel like I need to say something, I'll usually say, I just feel like this is not in my capacity right now, or I don't have the capacity to take it on because people can't argue with your capacity. It is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Another suggestion on that point is kind of, if somebody invites you to do something, to just say, "Hey, I'm not sure if my calendar can hold it.
Yeah.
Can I get back to you tomorrow?" Give yourself just a moment to kind of think through it and, consider all of the requirements that are going to be needed of you, so you can answer and respond real thoughtfully, instead of saying, "Oh yeah, I'll do that," and then regretting it the next
Yes.
morning.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, I am so excited and happy that changing your life and changing those things in your life was able to bring you two beautiful children, and that you have this full life now, and now you're passing it on to other people. What are one or two things that really helped change your health, that made fertility possible?
Yeah, part of it was I didn't understand the impact of cleaning products and personal care products and different things having to do with the toxins in those things.
Got
I
it.
just really had no clue. So part of it was understanding the impact of those chemicals on my fertility and
Mm.
my physical health. And I think the other aspect was just when I was starting, I knew that decluttering made me feel better, but I didn't recognize the actual impact for me and on my stress levels. And one thing I've also learned in kind of doing some of the research is that the brain sees visual clutter as undone tasks and things that
Mm.
we need to do. And that was definitely the case for me because even before being a stay-at-home mom and now a work-at-home mom, there were certain things I felt like I needed to handle or like my responsibility. And so if you're in a cluttered space and you're kind of looking around, or like I always think about my kitchen, then it's like, okay, I'm the one cooking the meals. So like this is my responsibility. I have to sign this. I have to do this. And I recognize like, oh, wow, that's really every time I come into this space is causing me more stress. And so what can I do to support myself and my mental and emotional health by creating more systems that are going to support me so that I'm not feeling that way. So, for example, in my kitchen, I have a physical inbox tray. And so that's when I check the mail, anything that needs action, I will put in there. The kids' papers for the day, put in there. So they're not like all over the place.
Yeah.
And that way, that's my brain saying, okay, this requires action. I know I'm going to do the action at a later time in the day, but it just helps me not to feel like constantly stressed out that I'm not doing the things that I'm supposed to do or like I'm not on top of things. That's like the worst feeling in the world for me. And I feel like just those simple tweaks really impacted my health and my ability to conceive. And then also I think surrendering to God. And that was really hard. Again, not knowing kind of what the plan was for me, but just recognizing that like I felt like I was called to be a mom no matter what. And so if that was adoption, great. If that was that we would have our own children, great. But it took a while for me to get to that point where I could surrender. But I always say you can't surrender to what God has for you if you're clutching to your stuff. So I was very much like this. And then as I learned more about letting go and decluttering and everything, I was able to kind of surrender and be like, okay, now I am now I'm ready, like, I'm available for whatever is coming my way,
Yeah.
and that was a process. So I think all of those things collectively really impacted my health and I think my ability to conceive and have these beautiful babies.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. It's a really good point that we often forget. Actually, I'm just kind of looking over here to the side because while everything in the camera screen looks pretty clean, I got a pile over here. And I'm like, yep, to do, to do, to do, to do.
Mhm.
Our brains are amazing the way they know and they don't want to let us forget about it. So they're constantly reminding us. So I think that's a really good point. And unfortunately, there's no like blood test you can take to say, how is my clutter affecting my health? You can't just take a test for that. But to know that it really is affecting us. And if your brain thinks you have too many things going on, too many things to do, it's interesting how that can affect the way that our brain would then help us conceive. Like maybe you don't have enough time to conceive. You got all these things to do.
Mhm.
You clearly don't have enough space in your life for a child. So I'm going to
Yeah.
just protect my body that way and not let you conceive.
Mhm.
No, I'm just, maybe that's what's happening. Maybe there's, something more scientific going on there. But that's a fantastic point just about decluttering. I love the inbox suggestion to kind of, I think we tried that once and my inbox was so overflowing. I needed a bigger bin for my inbox. But do you have a couple other suggestions if someone wanted to take action right now, today, on trying to declutter their world or change up things in their life on their calendar? What would you suggest?
Yeah, well, when it comes to physical stuff, I always recommend you start with the most unsentimental, unemotional things possible because decluttering is decision making, and we want to focus on the low hanging fruit, those easy decisions. So, I actually recommend that people start in their vehicle, which, of course, is not in their home at all, but it's a small enclosed space, and there's a very high, like I like to say, trash to sentimental item ratio. So normally you have wrappers or things that need to be brought back into the house. And then you can feel that sense of accomplishment when you're done after 15 or 20 minutes. And because I just actually had an episode recently about the decluttering rules that I love to break, which
Okay.
is funny since I'm such a rule follower. And one of them is thinking you have to take everything out like at one time and take like the contents of your closet and put everything on your bed. Well, if you do that, you will likely get interrupted by something. You're going to get interrupted by a pet or a kid or your spouse or something. And then you're left with this humongous mess. So I recommend just looking at subcategories and then really having these be like 15, 20-minute jobs so that you don't get left with this overwhelming mess. So I'm using the closet example. Maybe we just focus on, short sleeve shirts for 15 to 20 minutes or tank tops or something, just one category. And then we use those artificial boundaries to decide how much space we're allotting to that. But it just makes it so much more doable because I find that even if someone has a whole day or weekend, they're not going to want to spend it decluttering because it's hard work. So make those initial decisions easy and then also try to use subcategories so that you're not left with a mess and you can do hopefully like these 15 to 20-minute projects at a time.
Those are great suggestions. I love those suggestions. I'm going to go categorize my closet.
Yay!
Put them into segments. I can take out a section at a time. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, tell us a little about your podcast. You have a podcast for moms, I think. It's
Mhm.
for moms that are
Yep.
overwhelmed. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So the podcast is Moms Overcoming Overwhelm, and it's all about helping those overwhelmed moms declutter, as I say, your home, head, and heart.
Mm,
So we focus a lot on the physical. Again, when you're surrounded by a bunch of stuff and it's chaotic, sometimes that's kind of where you have to start. But also when it comes to our schedule, when it comes to the limiting beliefs or the negative self-talk that we often have as moms and how to sort of work on decluttering some of those things. Because I find that a lot of the women that have been joining my community also have been diagnosed with ADHD as adults. And I'm just finding that to be a lot more common with the women that I'm helping and recognizing that you're not broken, like your brain's not broken. It's just that you may need to approach decluttering and organizing in a slightly different way. And so those are kind of the things that we talk about. And I also have a Facebook community where we do decluttering challenges together. So at the time of recording, we're doing the 6-week decluttering and intentional spending challenge. And then usually we have just every other week, just doing these challenges just for more of that accountability and
mm.
support.
Well, it's more fun to do that together anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you can come back together and share your victories and the things
Mhm.
you've accomplished. So, that's fantastic. Well, tell us a little bit about how people can find you if they wanted to reach out and learn more.
Yeah, sure. I get so excited. Like the best way to find me is actually my podcast because I have all the links there. I'm not really too active on social media. It's not really my thing, but there's links to the Facebook group there. So anywhere you're listening here to Lisa, you can find me at Moms Overcoming Overwhelm. And then I would love to connect with you there.
Wonderful. We'll put that in the show notes for sure. And yeah, go take a listen, friends. Emily's got just a great way of helping people break these things down. And like she said, joining the community and getting to know other moms that you can team up with and share those victories and accomplish those challenges. It's really a great place to be. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for the opportunity to chat and share. I love the encouragement that you're bringing everyone with the podcast here and just these kind of simple ways that we can, I don't know, just change our approach and learn from others. So thank you for all the work that you're doing.
Thank you. I really appreciate having you. I appreciate your time and we'll look forward to having you back again. So thank you very much for your time today, Emily.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
There are so many surprising things in this conversation that I didn't even realize we were going to get to when we started our conversation. Emily just has a beautiful approach for how to declutter our life for the benefit of our health and our wellness. And for the benefit of all of our family members as well. I have 7 amazing takeaways for you today. Number 1, stuff is not neutral. Emily reminds us that the clutter is not just a visual nuisance. It directly impacts our emotional, mental, and even our physical health. Visual clutter elevates our cortisol levels, increases our stress, disrupts our sleep, and even pushes us into making unhealthy food choices. The weight of clutter isn't just on our shelves, my friends. It's on our shoulders, and eliminating it brings a whole lot more peace than you might even realize you need. Number 2, simplifying things brings sanity. During a season of postpartum anxiety for Emily, she found just by simplifying the environment and her routine helped her stabilize her internal world. Less stuff meant fewer decisions, and fewer decisions meant less overwhelm, and that became the foundation for her healing. If you're in a season of healing, look for ways to make your life and your schedule really simple, just one step, one thing at a time. Number 3, overwhelm often comes from decision fatigue. Every item in your home, every commitment on your calendar, and every lingering to-do adds to that mental load. Emily encourages us to simplify our choices, like limit the wardrobe options for the week, or streamline the routine to preserve your energy for those things that really matter most. Number 4, clutter can block blessings. One of the beautiful things that Emily shared with us is that you can't surrender to what God has for you if you're clutching onto your stuff. Sometimes I think decluttering is that spiritual work of just opening our hands and our hearts to be available for whatever God has for us next. But that's a little hard to do when you're clinging to the things that are sitting around you. It's not easy, and I recognize that, but taking that one step at a time and making those changes is so worth it. Number 5, no is a complete sentence. Emily enforces her unapologetic boundaries based on her capacity, not on guilt. And yes, it took her some time to learn that skill and to realize that saying no does not require an explanation. Protecting the margin in our schedules is the best way to lead a healthy, peace-filled, happy life, a life that you love. And the best way to protect the margin is with boundaries. Speaking of boundaries are actually critical for our success, whether they're artificial boundaries or whether they're real ones. So takeaway number 6 is create healthy boundaries. From physical bins for paper clutter to setting limits on your volunteer commitments, Emily shows us how creating these boundaries can give your brain the freedom to be at rest. When you give everything a place and every activity a purpose, your brain can stop reminding you of all the undone to-dos, and you can get the rest that you need. And finally, number 7, it's your season that determines what your capacity is. Whether you're caring for aging parents or raising small children, life comes at us in all kinds of different seasons. And Emily encourages us to stop blindly adding things to your life and to your schedule and start evaluating what could really be removed right now or added that will help support the season of life that you are in. Thank you again for joining me, friends. If you would, please share this episode because you never know what kind of encouragement might be in our conversation that someone else needs to hear. So pass it along, like it, share it, and subscribe. Together, we can flood the world with more encouragement. So until next time, my friends, stay encouraged, be inspired, and of course, I'll see you right back here next time at the Sunshine Cafe.